Get back to work. Go on.
So what I've got here is about the widest angle that my camera can handle given the confines of my room. And we'll take a look at these guys first. This is actually two pipes here. There'll be a little trimming to do once these are installed, but not too much. It's more about getting the length or the width down rather than cutting all of this inside tube. This is actually useful here because what you want to do once everything is all set up is drill a couple holes through the outer tube and the inner tube and spike those with a nail or a small piece of steel to make sure that they're totally locked up nice and tight. I also need to do a lot of cleaning on these and get the ends cleaned up so they screw in a little better. And even this flange here will have a few holes drilled into it through the pipe, so that way there's that much more rock solid stability. What I need to do at this point is pull this apart because we don't need the gas pipe right now. And a little mention on the gas pipes is that this is 1 1/4 inch and this is 1 inch, so that way they slide together. One of them is for plumbing and the other one is for electrical, I believe. It turns out that you can't get two plumbing pipes or two electrical pipes that actually slide in together as well as these two do. You can go to Home Depot and try one pipe until you get a good fit, basically. Or occasionally on the R2 Builders Club, someone will do the sourcing for you, and you just give them some money to cover their costs, and that's pretty much it. One of the big rules about the R2 Club is that no profit can really be made off of this because that would interfere with the Lucasfilm whole thing and probably help to shut us down. So this isn't any kind of garage sale. You can't buy a fully built R2 for yourself unless you go to like Sideshow Collectibles or a company like that that has a proper license. No R2 builder is really allowed to sell their R2s nor work for commission. So if you want an R2, you pretty much have to do it yourself. However, being a member of the club, there are a lot of folks that if they build a part for themselves, they'll make a resin casting of it, or they'll do a run of 10 or 20 of however many pieces of it, so that way a few of the others can share the joy and get in on the action. Back to these guys. So what I need to do now is pull the flanges and these little steel electrical plates off of here so we have just the bare wood. So the part runs on the club are definitely a boon to a lot of people simply because not everyone has the skills or the time or even the equipment to be able to do this themselves. This frame, for example, was done by another club member who just ran the files on his CNC machine. So the full plans to build an R2, an accurate screen used in the film Artoo-detoo, are freely available on the site. You just got to go and join the site, which is also free, so that you can access them. So while the plans are available, I wouldn't have the space or the tools to be able to build a frame like this. So this is actually a frame that I purchased off another member who had purchased it from the guy who had done the runs of it. The member I bought it from had switched up to an aluminum frame, and this was sitting unassembled in his garage for I think a year or two, he said, with the idea that maybe he would build a second one someday, maybe not, but there's a little thing on the forum or in the R2 Club, the aluminum addiction, where once you get some aluminum parts, they're just so beautiful that you want to build the whole droid out of aluminum. Highly expensive, as you might imagine. Cheapest way to build a droid is with styrene, regular .030 or 1/8 inch styrene sheet that you would then hand cut to fit. Most droids are mixed media droids. That is, they'll have styrene, resin, wood, aluminum, steel, fiberglass, and even 3D printed parts are now becoming fairly common, which of course is a version of styrene. whether ABS, styrene, or another type of plastic. Doesn't really too much matter specifically. There's at least one full-size Lego artoo-detoo out there that, while it still looks like it's built with Legos, is in fact essentially a spec R2. These little shoulder discs might be the only part on R2 that doesn't actually have a name. Sometimes they're called shoulder flanges, but there is another piece that is a shoulder flange. I've been calling them rondelles for the circular nature of Doctor Who and the TARDIS and the wall decorations on the control room. I actually got these from another member. They were some bad cuts for one of his droids. He's got 2 or 3 of them now. And he was happy to supply them to Arpie here, simply because he probably wasn't going to be using them. The only issue was that he had drilled a few too many holes in here trying to get everything lined up. So now that he's done all that work for us, that's definitely very handy. Because again, it's a matter of having the tools, and I simply don't, really, or the space in this particular area here. You'll notice that each of these does have a very large hole at the top, and that's for the electrical wires that are going to go down to the feet and the foot drive motors up from the batteries that go inside the frame. So once the skins are on, it's a matter of simply centering this hole, tapping a little mark in there, and drilling through. So the tricky part is to get the skins exactly dead center. And amongst the many important tools you're going to need for that is some ratchet straps. At least 3, top, bottom, and middle. Now, there are a couple ways to make sure that these get aligned properly, and you can probably see from all the light shining through that you don't need to get them exactly centered to the frame, but they do need to be awful close, because there are parts that go inside here and stick out to the outer body. It can be the case that sometimes there's a bit of a gap on the skins here. That's not too uncommon. However, the more you can minimize that, definitely the better, obviously. And of course, if I squeeze one side here, all of a sudden there's a big 1/4 inch gap here. And that's simply because the skins are a bit loose right now. Once I get these straps on here, that'll tighten everything up a lot. To help get the skin centered, there are 2 pieces that really do help a lot if you have them. One is called the large data port, the LDP, and that of course goes right here. So as long as that is in there, that should help fit everything. However, as you can see, there is a bit of wiggle room going on. The other handy piece are called the front coin slots, which fit down right in there. I don't have those. Sticking that piece through the back here to the front is helpful though. But we'll try and do it with just the LDP, which fits the aluminum perfectly. Just doesn't quite fit the wood frame. Let's get some straps on. So theoretically, if I get the front skin exactly dead center with all the framing, the back skin should be centered as well. However, that's not necessarily the case. And looking at the sides here, that doesn't necessarily look like it's centered either. So let's get you some shots of that. So looking at this point here and this point here, those are pretty much even to each other. And if we look inside here, you can see that And if we look inside here, I'm pretty much trying to run that line along the wood frame and get that line there centered along the wood frame too. Looking at the other panels in here, those look pretty much, I mean, they aren't exactly centered like this one here is not. However, as long as it's within the wooden frame itself, that's okay. And it even looks like the top here is not quite set up with there. There's a bit more metal up there, down there, than there is up here. And if we look directly on the side, you can see how there's room on the frame on this side. I don't know if that's necessarily a good or bad thing offhand. That's part of the good of being involved in a club, is that you can ask people about things like that. However, essentially, once this is in place, it probably won't matter. Yeah, definitely not. Now that I see the size of this roundel to the actual opening, that's probably pretty much going to fit. In fact, some of this wood here may need to be shaved out, in which case the whole project is off for today because I can't quite do that. At least not easily. Well, maybe I'll have to anyway. Let's see.